There's a battle that most people fight in silence, one that feels too shameful to admit, too personal to explain. You've tried to pray it away, suppress it, ignore it, but it lingers. Not just in moments of weakness, but in the quiet hours when no one else sees. And the worst part, it makes you question who you really are. Because when the desire returns, so does the shame. And deep down, you wonder, if I really love God, why am I still struggling with this? What if you've been looking at this all wrong? Today, we're going to explore a truth that isn't often talked about, not just how to fight temptation, but why it shows up so fiercely in your life in the first place. You'll discover that your struggle may not be proof of failure, but evidence of a deeper calling being formed within you. So stay with us until the end, because the perspective we share might be the one thing that finally shifts how you see yourself, your battle, and your purpose. I'd like to ask you to subscribe to our channel. Thank you. Some battles don't start with a decision. They start with a pattern. You didn't ask for this fight. You just woke up one day and realized it was already happening inside you. And the worst part, no one talks about it. Not the way you need to hear. Not with understanding. They throw shame, rules, and silence at a war that doesn't care about appearances. But what if this struggle says more about your purpose than your failure? The intensity isn't random. The guilt you carry, the frustration of falling again, the confusion over why this keeps returning, it isn't weakness. It's proof of proximity. When someone is chosen for something greater, they get attacked in the place that threatens darkness most. Lust isn't just a distraction. It's a weapon meant to sever your destiny before it matures. And the fact that it keeps coming for you? That says something. The enemy doesn't waste bullets on people who aren't dangerous. Think about it. David wasn't just tempted. He was targeted at the peak of his influence. Samson's weakness wasn't lust. It was that he didn't know his strength needed discipline. Joseph was hunted in isolation, not just to test him, but to prevent him from rising. This is more than coincidence. It's a spiritual pattern, one designed to wound those who carry divine assignments. You're not failing because you're far from God. In fact, you're struggling because you're closer than ever. Lust feels powerful because it hijacks the imagination, your ability to see beyond the physical, to dream, to create. If the enemy can corrupt your imagination, he can cloud your vision. And a chosen one with blurred vision is less of a threat. But one who sees clearly? That's dangerous. You've probably tried everything. Prayers that felt unanswered, promises to do better, seasons of purity that collapsed under the weight of loneliness or stress. And each time, the guilt dug deeper. It whispered that you were unworthy, that God was disappointed, that maybe you were just too broken to be used. But here's the truth, you're not too broken. You're being broken open for clarity, for empathy, for power that doesn't come from pretending, but from being real. Even Paul, the man who wrote much of the New Testament, admitted, "I do what I hate." Not to justify sin, but to humanize the war. To remind us that holiness isn't about never being tempted. It's about choosing truth in the middle of the fire. And that choice isn't always clean. Sometimes it looks like crawling forward with tear-stained prayers and a heart that won't quit. Shame wants to isolate you. It tells you that no one else feels this, that everyone else is stronger. But isolation is the oldest trap. If the enemy can convince you that you're the only one, you'll stop seeking help. You'll stop believing healing is possible. But healing doesn't begin in silence, it begins in truth. And the truth is, your battle doesn't disqualify you. It defines what you're willing to fight for. So maybe you're not under attack because you're weak. Maybe the target on your back exists because hell sees what you haven't fully recognized yet. Your calling is dangerous. Your purity isn't just moral, it's strategic. It protects your ability to love deeply, lead clearly, and hear God without distortion. Of course, it's under fire. It always has been. And here's where everything begins to shift. What if you stopped seeing this as proof of failure and started seeing it as evidence of assignment? What if the very area that's hardest to overcome is the area holding the greatest key to who you're becoming? The weight of this battle might feel unbearable at times, but you're not meant to carry it alone. You're not meant to hide it, ignore it, or pretend it doesn't exist. You're meant to grow through it, to be refined, not ruined, to be awakened, not ashamed. This isn't just temptation, it's training. It's not about erasing the desire, it's about understanding why it exists. Desire isn't evil, it's direction. It points to the parts of you that are capable of feeling deeply, longing fully, and connecting spiritually. The danger is when that desire is hijacked, when it's manipulated to pull you away from the very place it was designed to push you toward. Lust isn't about bodies. It's about escape. It shows up when your soul is tired, when your purpose feels distant, and when your heart needs comfort it hasn't learned how to ask for. The enemy offers a counterfeit comfort, wrapped in shame, masked as pleasure. And if he can get you to believe that your longing is a flaw, he can keep you from discovering what it's really trying to tell you. You were never meant to battle this alone, in the dark. You were meant to confront it in the light of truth, to ask better questions, to look beneath the surface. What triggers it? What silence does it fill? What fear does it soothe? When you stop running from a struggle and start learning from it, everything changes. This isn't the end of your story. It's the beginning of understanding it. And the moment you choose to see your battle not as shameful, but sacred, that's the moment hell starts losing its grip. Because the one who fights and still shows up, that's the one who can't be broken. Before continuing with our spiritual evolution, I'd like to ask you to subscribe to our channel. Thank you. Let's be honest, there are times when you've begged God to take it away. You've cried, promised, fasted. Maybe you even avoided certain places, cut off people, deleted apps, and still it's there. That same pull, that same weakness. And eventually it starts whispering, if God really loved you, wouldn't he have removed this by now? But what if love looks different than we thought? See, we've been taught that freedom means absence. No struggle, no urge, no failure. But what if real freedom is found not in what disappears, but in what you learn to stand through? Paul called it a thorn in the flesh, a weakness he couldn't shake. And what did God say when Paul begged for relief? My grace is sufficient for you. My strength is made perfect in your weakness. It hits different when you realize God didn't remove it, not because he wanted you to suffer, but because he wanted you to discover something deeper. Strength that wasn't yours. Grace that held you when willpower didn't. Intimacy that only comes from dependence. This struggle, as brutal as it feels, might not be punishment, it might be formation. That doesn't mean God is okay with sin. It doesn't mean you should stop trying. But it does mean your fight isn't being ignored. It's being watched, honored, used. God isn't after fake perfection, he's after real transformation. And transformation doesn't come through avoidance. It comes through confrontation, through wrestling, through humility, through surrender. Some of the strongest people you'll ever meet are the ones still battling, not the ones who pretend they've got it all together. Think about it. How many people in Scripture were chosen and anointed but still wrestled with something private? Moses had anger. Elijah had depression. Paul had his thorn. These weren't signs they were far from God. They were signs they were being shaped for something bigger. You don't have to love the thorn, but maybe it's time to stop seeing it as the thing that disqualifies you and start seeing it as the thing that keeps you close. Maybe the very thing that humbles you is what's also holding you. Maybe the place you feel weakest is where God is building the most strength. This doesn't mean you give up on healing. It means you stop measuring your worth by how pure you feel. It means you learn to walk in grace while you grow in discipline. It means you stop waiting to be perfect to be used. Some of your most powerful moments will happen when you're still bleeding, because that's when others see your realness. That's when they see God's grace. And maybe that's the whole point. Maybe God lets the thorn stay because he's not building an image, he's building a person. One who can love others in their mess because you've lived through yours. One who can lead with compassion because you know what pain feels like. One who doesn't judge weakness, but knows how to speak life into it. So next time that struggle resurfaces, pause. Don't spiral. Don't shame yourself. Ask, what's being formed in me right now? Because this isn't just about resisting sin. It's about recognizing what your resistance is revealing. You've asked God to take it away, but maybe he's waiting for you to see what it's been adding all along. You might have realized something. Your struggle hasn't disqualified you, it's trained you. But here's the truth most people won't say out loud. Just knowing you're being shaped by the fight doesn't make it easier. You still have days when the temptation is loud, nights when it creeps in silently. And in those moments, it's not enough to just pray it away. You need to know how to stand, not with fear, but with sacred resistance. This kind of resistance isn't about pretending you're not tempted. It's about refusing to let temptation define you. Shame will tell you to stay quiet, to deal with it alone. But silence only feeds the cycle. What breaks it? Honesty, intention, strategy. Not in a religious sense, but in a way that honors both your humanity and your divinity. Start with self-awareness. You don't win battles you don't see coming. Start noticing your patterns. Is it stress? Loneliness? Boredom? Lust doesn't just show up, it rides in on unmet needs. When you see the pattern, you reclaim power. You're no longer ambushed, you're awake. Then comes grace-powered discipline. Not legalism, not do-better mantras, but habits rooted in love, not guilt. Fasting, not to punish yourself, but to refocus. Boundaries, not to restrict joy, but to protect your purpose. Service, not to earn anything, but to stay anchored in something bigger than yourself. Discipline without grace turns you into a robot, but grace without discipline leaves you defenseless. You need both. Don't fight alone. Honest community isn't optional, it's survival. Find that one person, not a crowd, not a stage. Just one safe, mature voice who knows your story and won't flinch when you share the ugly parts. Lust grows in the dark, but the moment light touches it, it loses its grip. Not because it vanishes instantly, but because you're no longer carrying it alone. And finally, anchor your purpose. When temptation hits, pause and ask, what part of my calling is this trying to distract me from? Lust doesn't just aim to entertain, it aims to derail. It's a thief. And it doesn't just want a moment, it wants your mission. The more intense the temptation, the more threatened the enemy is by your potential. You're not weak for fighting. You're wise. You're building spiritual muscle every time you choose truth over impulse. And no, it won't always feel like victory. Sometimes it'll feel like just surviving. But don't confuse survival with failure. Surviving another round? That's proof you're still in it. And that matters more than you think. And if you're tired, that's okay too. It means you've been showing up. It means the battle matters to you. God isn't disappointed in your exhaustion. He's near to it. He knows how heavy the temptation gets when you've had a long day, when your heart is lonely, or when you're just tired of fighting the same old thing. But listen, your resistance has never been wasted. Every time you said no, even with trembling hands, it counted. And what if your struggle isn't just about you? What if someone's waiting to hear your story on the other side of this? What if your honesty unlocks someone else's healing? That's why sacred resistance matters. Because it doesn't just protect you, it prepares you to lead others through the darkness you've survived. You're not just fighting for purity. You're fighting to become a safe place for someone else's freedom. You might be wondering, but how do I keep going when I keep messing up? The answer isn't in punishment, it's in persistence. Keep choosing light. Keep choosing truth. Even if yesterday was a failure, today is a fresh battlefield. And you're stronger than you think. Not because you never fall, but because you keep rising with purpose in your hands. There's a version of you on the other side of this struggle, one who looks back with gratitude instead of guilt. One who no longer sees the fight as proof of failure, but as the very thing that made you wise, compassionate, unshakable. That version of you isn't some fantasy. It's already forming. In every prayer, every pause, every decision to not give up. And here's the most beautiful part. God isn't waiting for your victory to use you. He's using you while you're still fighting. He's using your honesty, your struggle, your tears, your story. That's what grace looks like. Not a reward for perfection. A companion through the process. You are not your worst thought. You are not your weakest moment. You are becoming something rare, something real. And even when you can't see the change, it's happening beneath the surface. Every sacred choice matters, even when no one else sees it, especially then. So as you step into tomorrow, don't walk in shame. Walk in strategy. Walk in sacred defiance. Not because the war is over, but because you're learning how to win differently. Because if you keep walking through it, you'll start to realize something powerful. This isn't just a fight anymore. It's a foundation. And on it, something unshakable is being built. You've been carrying this weight for a long time. Not just the temptation, but the shame, the questions, the feeling that if you were really chosen, you wouldn't be struggling like this. And yet, here you are, still fighting, still believing, still showing up, even when you're not sure if you're winning. But what if the win isn't what you thought it was? What if freedom isn't waiting on the other side of perfection, but is something you get to live in, even when the fight hasn't ended? You've been trying to prove that you're good enough, clean enough, holy enough, and it's exhausting, isn't it? You pray, then fail, promise, then fall. And every time it happens, the voice inside you whispers, you're not who you say you are. But what if that voice is a lie? What if the truth is, God never asked you to earn anything? He just asked you to be honest. And He already knew what you were struggling with before you ever said a word. The most dangerous lie is that you have to be perfect before you can be used. That your weakness disqualifies you from your calling. But read that again. Your weakness doesn't disqualify you. It's the very place where God chooses to show up the most. And that's not just spiritual poetry. It's the pattern. David didn't write Psalm 51 after a sermon. He wrote it after falling apart. Augustine didn't become a saint because he avoided lust. He became a guide for others because he was honest about it. And maybe the same thing is happening in you. You've been trying to hide your cracks, but the cracks are where the light gets in. You've been trying to fix yourself in secret, but healing doesn't come through hiding. It comes through surrender. Not the kind that means giving up, but the kind that means letting go of who you thought you had to be and stepping into who you already are. Because here's the truth, God doesn't love a future version of you. He loves you now, in this. With the mess, the tears, the confusion, the fight. And that love, that's what changes things. Not rules, not fear, not pretending. Just love. Consistent, unshakable, relentless love that doesn't flinch when it sees your worst day. That's the kind of love that builds real transformation. That's the kind of love that doesn't run when you fall, but kneels down next to you and says, "We're still going." So maybe it's time to stop asking to be free in order to be worthy. Maybe it's time to realize you're already worthy. And freedom, it starts with that realization. Because the truth is, you've never been alone in this. Not for 1 second. Every moment you thought you were failing, heaven was leaning closer. Not to judge, but to fight with you. You're not just being watched. You're being backed by grace. You don't need to wait for a perfect day to start living differently. You don't need to be perfect to be spirit-filled. You just need to be honest. That's what makes you trustworthy. That's what makes you dangerous to darkness. Because when you stop hiding, shame loses its grip. And that's when your story becomes a weapon, not just for you, but for someone else who thinks they're alone. You're not a slave to this. You don't have to repeat what broke you. Your desire for healing is already proof that the battle isn't over and you're not losing. You're learning. Every choice you've made to keep going has counted. Even the messiest moments weren't wasted. And what if the real purpose of this struggle isn't just to teach you discipline, but to teach you compassion? What if you're being shaped not to impress others with your strength, but to guide others through their weakness? What if your voice is what helps someone choose not to give up? There's no shame in this process. There's only forward. Forward in grace. Forward in truth. Forward in becoming someone who doesn't just survive, but builds something sacred from the pieces that once broke them. You're not dirty. Not a failure. You're a fighter. Someone becoming stronger with every step. The world sees your weakness and thinks it disqualifies you. But God, He sees it and calls it the soil where something eternal is growing. And if you can hold on to that, even when the storm hits hardest, you'll look back and see that the storm wasn't meant to destroy you. It was sent to reveal what could never be shaken. Your struggle does not make you unworthy. It reveals where your heart is still being shaped, where God is still building something deeper than perfection. He's building truth, endurance, compassion. The kind of strength that doesn't come from never falling, but from rising every single time with grace still in your hands. You were never called to be flawless. You were called to be faithful. And if you're still showing up, still praying, still trying, you're doing better than you think. Because freedom doesn't begin when the battle ends. Freedom begins the moment you stop hiding and start healing. And that healing, it doesn't just set you free, it becomes the light that helps someone else find their way out of the dark. You are not disqualified. You are not forgotten. You are being forged. So keep going. The fight might be hard, but the future being built through it is sacred. We'll walk through this together, one truth, one prayer, one step at a time. If this video has changed your spiritual journey and helped you connect with your universal strength, subscribe to the channel, leave a like below, and activate the notification bell so we can notify you when new content arrives. We also suggest watching the video indicated on the screen so you can continue your journey of spiritual growth and inner evolution of knowledge. Thank you for staying with us until the end, and see you in the next video.